Hey everyone. So I've already done an introduction to astrotheology video, which got a decent amount of hits to it. I have significantly expanded on it since then. So I wanted to just go over some stuff that you guys may have already seen, but there's some new stuff in here too, and I thought maybe you would enjoy it. This is my full presentation that I give, and to new podcasts and stuff. Usually we split it in half because there's just so many slides. So I usually go to the end of Matthew, and then I save the second part for another time. So let's start. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. That was Socrates. And that's the benefit that you guys get here. I've been studying the Bible for 30 years. I've been studying the esoteric and the occult for 20, and I've been studying astrotheology for 10, and I've been teaching astrotheology for a little more than 2 years, going on 3 years. And when you talk about the Bible, it's important to understand that the Bible is made up of what is known as the 7 holy sciences. The scriptures are metaphysical, astrological, which I go into because it's the oldest and it's the most prevalent out of all the 7, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, and mythology. The Bible is not literal, it is not historical, it is not reality, and it is not original. Now, this is the Zodiac, okay? With Capricorn at the bottom and Cancer on top. This is how it should look, okay? The top of Cancer being the summer solstice. And this is what the Zodiac wheel should look like. Okay, so if you see a variation of it, it's not that it's incorrect, it's just turned a little sideways. So it goes back to the Lascaux caves, astrotheology does. It's about 17,000 to 40,000 years ago. Here you see an article that says the Lascaux cave paintings are 17,000 years ago. Whereas on the right, it says the world's oldest cave paintings show humanity understood complex astronomy 40,000 years ago. The Lascaux caves are caves that are in Lascaux, France. That's why they call the Lascaux caves. It's nothing fancy. A bunch of teenagers went into the back of it about 50 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And they went all the way into the back of the cave. And when they went into the back, they saw something like this. Now on the top, you see the bull. On the right, you see the lion. And on the bottom, you see the horse. Now, they quickly realized when they told people about this and they came in to look at it, that the bull was Taurus, the lion was Leo, and the horse was Sagittarius. It's just missing the guy with the bow and the arrow. What they did was they carbon dated it, and it came out to about 50,000 years. I'm sorry, it came out to about 17,000 years old. Now, people who are animus against carbon dating, like religious Christians, for example, they're actually half right. Carbon dating isn't very accurate past 50,000 years at all, actually. You got to use other uranium datings. There's other forms of carbon dating that we've come up with since then. But on a carbon-14 dating, which is what they did here, it came out to 17,000 years. So that's pretty accurate. So what they did was they called in an astronomer and an astrologer. And what they did was they wound the sky back with a computer program to show what the stars looked like in Lascaux 17,000 years ago. And when they printed it out and superimposed it on the wall, all the constellations lined up. So they knew about this. And what's impressive too is on June 21st, the summer solstice, and only on the summer solstice, light actually crept into the cave and bounced off the back of the wall. So man-made cave, understanding astrology on the wall. Now there's questions you can ask. How Jesus was able to heal the blind, how he walked on water, how he turned water into wine, why he had 12 disciples, why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas, why he was dead for 3 days, why is his birthday on December 25th. All that could be answered with astrology. Genesis 1:14 says, let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years. And that's basically what the Zodiac is. I'm going to show you how it's an encoded farmer's almanac, which is a dated piece of literature, because you'll see a lot of tropes that we don't deal with anymore, like being put to death if you wear 2 fabrics, or marrying your dead brother's wife in order to keep his progeny alive, or his bloodline. There's things that they do in the Bible that are just very dated for their time, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's incredibly encoded. Okay. Now, each zodiac sign is called a house, or an era, or an eon, or a sign. There are many words for it, but I wanted to just mention the fact that the zodiac sign is called a house. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over the 12 signs, which a lot of you have seen already, but I kind of drill it into your head because this is what you need to understand. You need to know this frontwards and backwards. Okay. First sign I talk about is Aquarius, which is represented by the man. Technically, Aries begins the year. It's the story of Zeus and the young boy. That's where the Aquarius gets its story from. So the story of Zeus and the young boy is basically that Zeus saw a 14-year-old blonde boy on Earth who he thought was beautiful and wanted to bring up to heaven. But the boy's father wouldn't let him. So Zeus bargains with him. He gives him like land and money and animals and such. The boy's allowed to go to heaven. The boy goes up to heaven and he's serving the gods this drink called ambrosia, which is the nectar of the gods, out of that water pitcher. And after doing this for a while, he eventually gets fed up and he goes to the side of heaven, like shown in this picture, and he pours it out, which causes a flood on Earth. That's where the Greeks get their flood story from. Everyone's got a flood story. And then basically what happens is Zeus, in a moment of self-reflection, was going to punish him. But then he realized that he kind of, nudged the boy into this new lifestyle. So what he did was he ended up just immortalizing him as the constellation Aquarius. Now, Aquarius in astrology is an air sign, okay? However, because there's water in the picture, okay, it's used to describe water. So the word son of man, baptism, because this is how you baptize someone, water pitcher, because this is a water pitcher, fountain, stream, river, pond, lake, ocean, sea, water bodies, reference Aquarius. The same thing goes with the mutable water sign, Pisces. It's the sign of the two fish in the water. So whenever you hear stream, river, pond, lake, sea, ocean, those examples, that's Pisces. Then Aries is the ram, and in Aries you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day, 12-hour night. It's also the Passover, or the passing over of the sun over the equator and back on its way to its height in the summer solstice. That's astrotheology. In Christianity, the passing over is changed, and it's called the resurrection of God's son. Easter happens in Aries. In the Jewish Passover, the angel of death passes over all the households in Egypt, and anyone that doesn't have the lamb or the ram, Aries the ram, the people of Aries, the ram, the Jews, anyone that doesn't have the ram's blood smeared on their doorposts, their firstborn sons get killed. So it's three different meanings for the word Passover, but they all go back to the sun going over the equator. So whenever you hear ram, lamb, shepherd, or ram's horn, they're talking about Aries. Taurus is the bull. And when you look at the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seed so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. So whenever you hear bull, ox, calf, or cow being the female bull, you're talking about Taurus. Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. It's the story of Achilles. So whenever you hear twins or brothers, you're talking about Gemini. The story of Achilles, again, is a Greek story. Cancer is the crab, and it's a sideways moving creature. Just as the sun rises a degree on its axis starting on December 25th, and each consecutive day another degree, the days get longer, the nights get shorter. It stops on June 21st, and for 3 days it doesn't rise another degree or lower a degree, it stays the same, so hence walking sideways. Then on June 25th, it lowers a degree. Now the crab in the ancient Egyptian time was known as the scarab, the beetle. So whenever you hear crab or beetle, they're talking about Cancer. Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So when they're talking about the kingdom of heaven on earth, they're talking about the sun actually being in its home in Leo. Okay, so the lion, the lioness, the cub, that's all Leo. Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. So remember before when you said that you plant in Taurus, well, the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin or even girl, or old lady, feminine, female characters. Aquarius is the man, so it'll be like boy, man, elderly man, whereas Virgo would be like girl, female, woman, virgin, old lady. All because Aquarius is the man sign and Virgo is the woman sign. Virgin, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, grainy things that you harvest, that happens in Virgo. Then Libra is the justice. It's the scales, it's the balance, it's the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. The Jews actually always celebrate their new year around the fall equinox. Okay, I get into this in other videos, but the Jewish 8 days after the Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, there's a day called Yom Kippur, which is when the Jews go to temple all day. They fast, they don't drink anything, they don't eat anything, and they pray that God will keep them in the book of life for another year. Okay, that day is known as the Day of Judgment. Well, of course, the judgment happens in Libra. Libra is also a wine season, which is when you plant for the grapes, and Taurus, you can press the wine here. So whenever you hear law, judge, justice, the just one, divorce, marriage, court, lawly things, that's Libra. Wine vineyard, wine press, grapes, that's Libra. Olives or oil or olive oil, that's Libra too. You press the olives in Libra in order to get the oil. Incidentally, frankincense and myrrh are both olive plants as well too. So when we get to the New Testament, when they talk about that, they're referring to Libra. Scorpio is the scorpion. He is the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. It's why the mafia has the kiss of death, and it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with the kiss. So the sun is judged in Libra, and it's betrayed in Scorpio. Finally, in Sagittarius, this is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflict further punishment on the sun. Why? This is where the sun dies, because on December 21st, the sun is at its lowest point. See, it's at its highest point on June 21st, but on December 21st, it's at its lowest point. It cannot rise any lower. It's considered dead. It's the dead of winter. The ancients would look at the sun and notice it didn't even crack the horizon on this day. So they would say God's son was dead. Then it walks sideways for 3 days like it did in June. It stays at that height or at that low point. So suddenly God's son was dead for 3 days. I know you've heard this before on like Zeitgeist and everything, but it's actually true. Okay, when on December 25th, it rises a degree, the first time it rises a degree. That's why all the gods are born on December 25th. So whenever you hear horse, bow and arrow, spear, or horseman, you're talking about Sagittarius. And then finally you have Capricorn, who's the goat because he likes to climb the mountain. So this is a simple metaphor. If you look at the zodiac wheel on the right, Capricorn's at the bottom. If you put a little sun, a dot, and you walk it to the left a degree a day until it reaches the top of Cancer, okay, it starts to climb in Capricorn. It starts to climb up the great mountain, the zodiac being the mountain. Just like the goats, the mountain goats climb. So those are the 12 signs, guys. And I really hope that you guys can commit this to memory because it's very important to understand this moving forward. So those are the 12 signs, everyone. So now when you're in church, they will reference names for Jesus that are literally astrology. The names that they give him, the monikers that they give him, they're all astrology. When the sun, or Jesus, the Son of God, is in Capricorn, the goat, he's called the scapegoat of Israel. When the sun is in Aquarius, the son of the man, he's the son of man. When the sun is in Pisces, the two fish, he's known as the fisherman of men. And that's also why he fed the masses with two fish. When the sun is in Aries, the ram, or the lamb, he's called the Lamb of God. Cancer, the scarab, the beetle, St. Augustine called Jesus the good beetle. When the sun is in Leo, he's called the Lion of Judah. The lady holding the stalk of wheat, Virgo, he's born of a virgin and he's called the bread of life. Libra is the scales of justice. He's known as the just one. And he's betrayed in Scorpio. He dies in Sagittarius on December 21st. It's also why he's worshipped on the Sunday. Now I'm going to draw your attention to the picture of Jesus. Okay, you're going to notice some things. The sun behind his head, that white face, that stereotypical white face of his, the two fingers up like this, the heart outside the body and the crown of thorns around it, and the white and the red garments. Now remember how I told you that the book was also alchemy? Well, the white and the red is known as the marriage of the red king and the white queen in alchemy. To put it in a different way, it's the merging of Mercury, the red, and sulfur, the white. Okay? Now, the sun is always behind Jesus because he represents the sun. You won't be able to find a picture of Jesus without the sun behind his head. Now, the two fingers up are an ancient Kemetic peace sign. The separate sign is the war sign. So the John Lennon peace sign is actually a British victory war sign. It's a Churchill sign, okay? Whereas the two fingers up are an ancient Kemetic peace sign. So when you see Jesus with the two fingers up, or Buddha with the two fingers up, or even Baphomet with the two fingers up, they're telling you that they're peaceful. We'll get into Baphomet a little bit later. The white Jesus picture is actually a guy named Caesar Borgia, who was the bastard son of Pope Alexander VI. So Rodrigo Borgia of the Borgia Illuminati family bought his way to the papacy in the 1500s. Now, 80 years before that, the printing press had came out. Okay, so they were able to mass produce his face of Jesus. Now, the crown of thorns wrapped around the heart on the outside, and the heart is always outside the body, represents the rays of the sun. The heart outside the body represents the toroidal field or the Taurus field. And these are just pictures of Jesus that you just pulled. The sun, it's always involving the sun. Now in the second picture, you'll see sometimes there's a Knights Templar cross in the sun. You'll see the two fingers up, the heart outside the body, the stereotypical face, okay? But even in baby Jesus, okay, the sun is behind his head because he represents the sun. Everyone knew this. Now you'll always see one star that's brightly shining in the back of the pictures. That's Polaris, the North Star, okay? Now, this is the human toroidal field. It's an electromagnetic field of the heart that circumvents your body 6 feet. That's why the elites are trying to keep you 6 feet apart during the pandemic, is so that you can't interact with another one or another person. When someone comes up behind you and you know they're there, they broke your toroidal field. You're not psychic, okay? You don't just know when people come up behind you. It's not instinct. It's a toroidal field. When two energies merge, it looks like this. Okay, it forms a Vesica Pisces in the middle. Now, this is the picture of Jesus on the left, and this is the picture, an early drawing of Caesar Borgia, who was really a bastard, literally and literally. He killed his brother. He slept with his sister. He was a hot mess. Okay. Now, before the Shroud of Turin was discovered in 525 AD, almost all paintings and drawings of Jesus showed a young beardless man. Okay, that changed. Okay. So he became a bearded man after the Shroud of Turin, and then he got his stereotypical face from Caesar Borgia. So now we've gone over some basic stuff, so let's go into some stuff. So you have pride comes before the fall. That's the first thing. Well, people will take that to mention or to mean that when you are too prideful or too boastful, then you're setting yourself up for a downfall, which is a interesting and a honest way of thinking about it. But a group of lions is also called a pride. So a group of lions is called the pride. Pride is the lion. Lion is Leo. Leo is in July and August. That comes before the fall. So the next one is from Micah 5:2. Micah 5:2, but you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come from me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient times. However, Bethlehem is a combination of two words in Hebrew, bet, which means house, and lechem, which means bread, so the house of bread. Well, I explained to you earlier, the zodiac sign is called the house. Which one would be the house of bread? It would be Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk, the virgin. So what he's really saying, encodedly, is that the Savior will come from a virgin. That's how you understand it astrotheologically. Now, the next one, Deuteronomy 32, let's go over. He gave them honey from the cliffs and olive oil from the rocky ground. He gives people butter from the herd and milk from the flock. He gave them lambs and goats. They had the best rams from Bashan and the finest wheat. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. So there's 10 signs in here. Let's go over that. He gave them honey from the cliffs. In the sign Cancer, there's a group of stars called the Beehive Cluster. Okay, so that's where the honey comes from. Olive oil we know is Libra. That's when you press it. He gives people butter from the herd and milk from the flock. Well, milk comes from the Milky Way galaxy, whose centers in Sagittarius. So your land from Cancer to Sagittarius, the Beehive Cluster of the Milky Way galaxy, that's your land of milk and honey. It's in the heavens. It's not actually on Earth. He gave them lambs, that's Aries, and goats, that's Capricorn. They had the best rams, that's Aries from Bashan, and the finest wheat. Wheat is Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. That's Libra. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. So that's Taurus. So I hope you guys are able to start seeing how this decodes using the cipher. The Mount of Olives. Jesus led his disciples to the Mount of Olives after his last Passover so he could teach them a few more things, pray, then wait for Judas to betray him. While walking to the Mount of Olives, he gave the parable of the true vine. So I'm using the zodiac on the left because I'm going to show you how you actually decode it with the wheel. Okay, so Passover takes place in Aries. He'll find Aries. It's all the way on the left. We're right after that, he walks to the Mount of Olives while olives are in Libra. So Aries to Libra, how would you do that? You go across the zodiac, okay? Cross signs and connecting signs. So Aries connecting signs would be Pisces and Taurus. Okay, Aries opposing sign would be Libra. This is how they encode everything. Not only does it mention the zodiac, but it also forms patterns in them. Okay, so they're in Libra now. They're waiting for Judas to betray him. Well, when is the betrayer? The betrayer is Scorpio. It's the next sign over from Libra. So you go from Aries to Libra, cross sign, and then you're waiting for the next sign. While you're in Libra, he gave the parable of the true vine, which is grapes or wine, which is still Libra. Okay, so that's how you start to decode things. Genesis 1:7, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which are under the firmament from the waters which are above the firmament, and it was so. The firmament are the dividing lines between the zodiac signs, okay? It's not a flat, it's not a dome over a flat earth. That's not what the firmament is, okay? It's a mistranslation. The firmament is the dividing lines between the zodiac signs, okay? Now the two waters would be Aquarius and Pisces. So, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, Pisces, from the water which were above the firmament, Aquarius, and it was so. So he's talking about how the zodiac was created. Okay. Incidentally, the dividing lines, the firmament, it's a 3-day period where one sign hands over the energy to another. Okay. So some of you call them cusps, some of you call them handover dates. There's different words for it, but basically that's basically what it is. Revelation 4:7, the first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Okay. The first living creature was like a lion. That's Leo. The second was like an ox. That's Taurus. The third had a face like a man. That's Aquarius. The fourth was like a flying eagle. In astrology, the scorpion is the belly crawling creature. It's the lowest form of life on earth. Its evolved form, also called the ascendant, is the eagle, which is the highest flying form of life on earth. So the eagle becomes Scorpio. So Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. And why are they the fixed signs? Why fixed? Well, because they're fixed in their season. Leo's in the middle of summer. Taurus is in the middle of spring. Aquarius is dead in the middle of winter. And the eagle or Scorpio is in the middle of the fall. So let's read this one more time. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. And it's important to know that the lion, Leo, and the man, Aquarius, are opposing signs. The ox, Taurus, and the eagle, Scorpio, are opposing signs. So reading this, if we plot it on the zodiac wheel, it comes out to this. It's a cross, or it's an X. Okay? It's a perfect alignment. Makes an X to the wheel. So that's what this passage is talking about. It's trying to explain that. Okay. Now Ezekiel 10:14, each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One was that of a cherub, the second face of a human being, the third of a lion, and the fourth face of an eagle. So Ezekiel's wheel that they're talking about, okay, the wheel is actually the zodiac. Revelation 12, a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun or with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail struck a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. Okay? There's people that believe there's going to be a dragon in the sky that looks at a woman, a virgin woman who's pregnant. A woman clothed with the sun is a sun clothed in Virgo. It's just a metaphor. If the sun is in Virgo, the moon will be at her feet. So the zodiac is 12 signs. There's a 24-hour day clock. So the sun literally spends 2 hours a day in each sign. It's just simple math. Now, if the sun is in Virgo, that's between 4 and 6 p.m. So that's when the sun is still out. So if the sun is out, the moon will be at her feet metaphorically. Whereas if the moon is out, the sun is at her feet metaphorically. So another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous dragon. Its tail struck a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. The constellation Draco is the dragon. Its tail goes from Aries to Sagittarius, which is 4/12 of the sign, or 1/3 of the stars out of the sky. It's just star poetry, just like Revelation 4:7 was. Revelation 7:4, then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. So when you're talking about this particular passage, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses and there's many born-again Christians that believe that the 144,000 are predetermined people, and no matter what you do, you're predetermined to go to heaven, and only 144,000 people get to go to heaven. Okay, they believe this with all their heart. However, understanding that the Bible is an amalgamation of a bunch of different sciences, you'd be hard-pressed not to consider this finding. There are 7 chakras. The root has 4 petals, the sacral has 6, the solar plexus has 10. The heart has 12, and the throat has 16, which equals 48. The third eye chakra, represented by 96, and only has 2 petals because it's 2 times as powerful as the lower chakras. 48 times 2 is 96. Now, the crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras, your pineal gland chakra, the crown chakra. When you add the lower 6, you get 96 plus 48 is 144, and you times that by 1,000 by the crown chakra, and you get your 144,000. What it's saying is when you've activated all your chakras, that is when you get to go see God. All right, it's that simple. Okay, it's borrowed from the East. They're talking about the chakras. Matthew 10:16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. The sheep is Aries, and the wolf is the constellation Lupus, who borders the Libra line. They're opposing signs. Look at the line that it makes in the zodiac. Okay, so people like quoting this stuff. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, yet not really realizing they're talking about the stars. So I've given examples of astrotheology in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, I should say, as well as the New Testament. I've been accused of cherry picking verses from the Bible to prove a point. Let's take a much longer passage, see if we can decode it as well. This comes up to the Book of Job. Now, the story of Job is basically he was a righteous man. He had land, he had money, he had family, he had animals, and he was righteous to God. And Satan comes up to God and says, if you take his stuff away, he will curse you. He's only faithful because he's bountiful. And God says, I'll take that bet. You could do whatever you want to him, but you may not take his life. So Satan doesn't take his life, but he takes pretty much away everything else. And then at one point, Job is crying out to God to help him. God responds to him. What I'm going to read you is God's response. Now, the first line is what God says. The second line is the astrological interpretation. Job 38:32. God says, his first line says, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? Well, the Mazzaroth literally means the zodiac. His first line is saying, do you know the zodiac? Mazzaroth over time becomes the word Mazalot, which survives in Judaism today, and we know how old Mazel Tov is. Mazel Tov means good fortune from the stars. So what is the Lord's challenge to Job? He says, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? These are the types of metaphors, celestial metaphors, that we've been decoding, talking about. Then he says, can you bring forth the constellation in their seasons or lead out the bear with its cubs? The constellations are the zodiac above, and the bear and its cubs are Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper. Who can tip over the water jars of heavens? Well, that's literally the man with the water pitcher. In the heavens, Aquarius. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger for the lions? That's Leo. Who provides food for the raven? That's the constellation Corvus, which means raven and borders on Virgo. Do you watch where the doe bears her fawn? Mariga, meaning deer, is located in Orion. Who let the wild donkey go free? That's Acellus Borealis, meaning donkey, and is located in Cancer. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? That's Taurus. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully. That's Lambda Achille, or Alpha Liman, which means 2 ostriches in Arabic. Do you give the horse its strength? It laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy away from the sword. The quiver rattles against its side, along with the flashing spear and lance. That's Sagittarius with the bow and the arrow. The spear is an instrument of death. That's why it is coordinated with Sagittarius, okay, the death. Why is the spear the death? Well, there's 2 important Bible murders that happen. Okay, you have Jesus, who's hit with the spear of destiny on the side to make sure that he's dead. And then you have Cain and Abel, the first murder. Whereas Cain hits Abel in the head with a rock and then buries him. That's not really a spear. But the word Cain in Hebrew translates to spear. Okay, so the spear is an instrument of death. And when you're talking about the horse, the quiver rattles against its side. That's the quiver with the arrows. That's Sagittarius with the bow and the arrow. Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? That's Aquila, which is the Latin name for eagle and is a constellation a few degrees above the celestial equator. Finally, he says, and can you pull a Leviathan with a fish hook? And anybody that knows anything about the ancient fish gods, Mithra, Dagon, Leviathan was the ancient fish god. So that's Pisces the fish. So as you can see, his entire challenge to Job is, do you know where I put these stars? Do you know what they mean? Do you understand this? Okay. Psalm 104, he sends forth springs in their valleys. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and wine which makes man's heart glad, so that he may make his face glisten with oil. The high mountains are for the wild goats. He made the moon for the seasons. The sun knows its place and its setting. The young lions roar after their prey. The springs are Aquarius. The wild donkeys are Celis Borealis, which are in Cancer. The cattle is Taurus, the bull. The wine is Libra. The oil is Libra. The wild goats are Capricorn. The moon for its season and the sun knows the place of its setting is openly talking about the sun and the moon. The lion roars after its prey, or Leo. To continue with Psalms 147. He gives to the beast its food, and to the young ravens which cry. He does not delight in the strength of a horse. He does not take pleasure in the legs of a man. He makes peace in your borders. He satisfies you with the finest of the wheat. He gives snow like wolves. The ravens are the constellation Corvus. The horse is Sagittarius. The man is Aquarius. The wheat is Virgo, and the wool from the sheep is Aries. So how Jesus was able to heal the blind? These are the questions from the beginning. Well, in the story, the blind man comes up to Jesus. Jesus licks his fingers and touches his eyes, and suddenly the man can see. However, the sun does the same thing too. When the sun is out during the day, we have the gift of sight, but when it goes down at night, when it's chased into the underworld, Horus and Set, the sun's Set, when Set chases into the underground, we're blind. We don't have vision. We don't see. That's why we need artificial lights at night so that we can see. But when the sun comes up and touches our eyes in the morning, we're given the gift of sight. How we walked on water. You ever seen a sunset on a lake before? And as far as Christos goes, Jesus Christ, in Greek, Christ is Christos, which means anointed one, which means oil. Doesn't oil also walk on water when you pour it on? See, it's a double entendre here. Actually, it's a triple entendre here between Jesus walking on the sun, on the water, the sun walking on the water, and the oil walking on the water. So how he turned water into wine, this isn't a parlor trick. This is actually a process. So the reason God is considered a man and Mother Earth is considered a woman has to do with God's sacred fluid, the rain. In Hebrew, the word is shemen. We get the word semen from it. It's God's sacred fluid. So what happens is God's fluid comes down onto Mother Earth, and then from her belly, she gets pregnant, and then food and trees and vegetation grow, okay? So what happens is you have Taurus, when you plant the bull, you plant the grapes, and then April showers bring May flowers. That's in Taurus. Everyone knows that. And then it rains and it rains and it rains. And then in Libra, you pick the grapes and you crush them into wine. That's how you turn God's water into wine. Why he had 12 disciples. We went over that. Judas is Scorpio. Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher, would clearly be John the Baptist. And another one would be Simon Peter as Pisces. So basically, with Simon Peter, his name is Simon, and he's called Peter, which is not a name that comes to that, but you have to understand your zodiac. Peter was a fisherman, or Simon was a fisherman. Okay, the two fish are Pisces. Well, astrologically, the ruling planet of Pisces is Jupiter, or Jew-Peter. It's just a play on words. Why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas. We went over that. Why he was dead for 3 days. We went over that. Why is his birthday on December 25th? We went over that. Now, this science that I'm teaching you guys only works for the people in the Northern Hemisphere. And there's a reason for that. The Egyptians, Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all based out of the Northern Hemisphere. For example, June 21st, the summer solstice, it's actually the winter solstice in Australia, New Zealand, much of South Africa, and South America. Okay, that's why this was done this way. Otherwise, if like, all these ancient stories, the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Jews, the Christians, and Muslims, if they were all in the Southern Hemisphere, this would be a different story. So it doesn't stop there. It's not just random passages in the Bible that can be decoded this way. We're going to go through the entire book of Matthew to show how deep this runs. Now, I've put the zodiac on the left here, and I've highlighted a section in red so that you guys can follow along the story. So Matthew 3:2, repent of your sins and turn to God, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Each gospel begins at one of the four major points in the zodiac. It ends at one of them as well, too. The two solstices and the two equinox, when connected, form a cross. This is known as the cross of God's Son. The kingdom of heaven is Leo, whose ruling planet is the sun. This is the only sign that the sun rules over. The closest of the 4 points is June 21st in Cancer. This is where the gospel will start. This is the firmament between Cancer and Leo. It is the beginning of the kingdom. There's a saying in the Bible that says the firmament shows God's handiwork. The firmament are the dividing lines between signs, okay? And it's important to know that when you're fully in a sign, Okay. When you're fully in Leo, you can only talk about lion, lioness, and cub, or any of the stars that are in Leo, constellations. However, if you had a firmament between Cancer and Leo, you could talk about all lion stuff. You could talk about the crab, the beetle. You could talk about honey. You could talk about bees, the beehive cluster, which is in Cancer. You could talk about both if you're at the firmament, because it's on either side. Okay, now the next passage, Matthew 3:4, John's clothes were woven from coarse camel hair, and he wore a leather belt around his waist. For food, he ate locusts and wild honey. So what really stands out to me here is the camel hair and the locusts. If we take the most famous drawing of a man, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and superimpose it onto the Zodiac, we can make sense of it. And I've gotten comments before saying that the Vitruvian Man wasn't out when the Bible was out, so this isn't how they were done it. Yeah, but you can use a stick figure. It doesn't have to be the Vitruvian Man. Okay, I happen to use the Vitruvian Man just because it's elegant. Cancer being the head is why he eats wild honey. In Cancer, there's a star cluster called the beehive cluster. Bees produce honey. Now, Leviticus 11, what's clean and unclean to eat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat. Those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these, you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. Okay, so there's the locust. And then there's the grasshopper too. So when the elites are trying to push you to eat grasshoppers, okay, know that it's biblical. They're getting it from Leviticus 11. Okay. Pound of grasshoppers is 3 times as nutritious as a pound of beef. See, they're pushing this. They're pushing this stuff. A little lower on the body. So we were in Cancer. Now we're in Gemini. Those are connecting signs. A little lower on the body is the clothes made out of camel hair, or the constellation Camelopardalis, which is in Gemini. So right now you have the head and the upper body so far. Moving a little lower down on the body, you get his midsection, which is where you'd wear a belt. Okay, so now we're in Taurus, another connecting sign. Okay, Taurus represents the bull and the female is the cow. The cow is where you get the leather. Regarding the belt part, Orion's belt sits between Taurus and Gemini. Next would be the baptism. So now how are we going to go from the beginning of Leo to a water sign to signify the baptism? You go across the zodiac. Cross signs, as they are known, or opposing signs, are signs opposite location. For example, Aries and Libra are cross signs. This is very important. The signs, 2 most important signs, technically 3, are its 2 neighboring signs and its cross sign. Here we see how it makes a leap from one firmament to the other. The man with the water pitcher is an Aquarius. It's personified as John the Baptist with the water. It's important to note too that John the Baptist and Jesus are always exactly 6 months apart on the zodiac wheel. When you think about the fact that Jesus is born on December 25th and rises a degree a day, then that must mean that John the Baptist is born on June 24th and decrease a degree a day. This is why in John 3:30, John says, "He must increase, but I must decrease." It's also why St. John's Day is exactly 6 months to the day of the birthday of Jesus. So the next story is the temptation of Jesus. So we're going back to the Cancer Leo firmament of July 24th. Well, this is simple. He's tempted for 40 days. So just count 40 days. Okay. July 24th takes you to September 2nd. That's right in the middle of Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk. So what is the very next passage that we get? Okay, Matthew 4:3. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread. Here we see mention of the bread, which tells you that the sun is in Virgo. The next passage, Matthew 5:17 and 22, I did not come to abolish the law. And if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. This takes place in Libra. So we went from Virgo to Libra. Those are connecting signs. Okay. Matthew 7:15 and 16. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep. And can you pick the grapes from the thorn bushes? The sheep are the ram in Aries, and the grapes are in Libra. Once again, they are opposing signs. Moving along, Matthew 13. Later that same day, Jesus left the house and sat beside the lake. I emphasize beside the lake. Why? The story now moves from Libra to the barrier between Aquarius and Pisces, the firmament. Okay, as he is right beside the lake, or the 2 water signs. See, if he was in a lake or in a body of water, he would have been in Aquarius, or he would have been in Pisces. But because he's beside it, he's not in it. He's between the 2 signs of the firmament. I hope that makes sense. Okay. As he is right beside the lake and the 2 water signs, its cross sign is the Leo Virgo firmament. As it's across from Virgo, the wheat stalk, the grains. Is it ironic that the next parables are the wheat and the weeds, the mustard seed, and the yeast? All grain, all having to do with bread. Virgo, the bread. Moving right along, next is the fishing net parable. So we go back from Leo Virgo to Aquarius Pisces. Since we're in touching Pisces, we can now talk about the fish. Gemini is just a sign of two men, technically twins. However, there's just a short mention of brothers in the next passage. He's just the carpenter's son. And we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. Descends at the firmament of Gemini, Cancer. How do we know this? Well, follow along. We're in Gemini talking about the brothers and the twins. Okay? The Gemini, Cancer firmament. So we're still talking about Gemini, but if you follow that across, you get Sagittarius, Capricorn firmament. What day is that? That's December 21st. That's the day of death. What is the very next story? As if it's not going to miss a beat. The next story is John the Baptist's death. As I mentioned previously, death comes at the end of Sagittarius. The firmament of Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Gemini, Cancer are opposing signs. So let's take this sentence, which sounds like it could be in the Bible, but isn't. If I say to you, the rulers were divided between war and love, it split the land in half, you could read that as a literal translation. However, if you apply astrology to it, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars, who's the god of war. The ruling planet of Libra is Venus, who's the goddess of love. There is your war and love. If you connect it, it literally splits the land in half. Matthew 14, 17, and 32. But we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The bread and the fish are opposing signs in the zodiac. Pisces, the fish, and Virgo, the bread. They're opposing signs. Okay? Pisces is the 2 fish, which is why Jesus feeds the masses with 2 fish. And as far as the 5 loaves of bread, why 5? Well, the year starts in Aries. If you count 5 signs from Aries, you get to Virgo. So that's why it's 5 loaves of bread. This is the cross of God's Son. We were just in Virgo, and now next is Libra, which is law, wine, and oil, remember? What stories do we get now? The story of the temple tax, the unforgiving debtor, divorce and marriage, all law-related stuff, and the parable of the vineyard worker, all wine-related stuff. So there you go. Next is Scorpio, the betrayer. This is where Judas betrays Jesus with the kiss. So we were in Virgo, then we were in Libra, connecting signs. Now we're in Scorpio, connecting signs. What's next? What happens in Sagittarius, guys? It's the death. Sagittarius is the death. Here's where Jesus is crucified on the cross. Astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you. And it's important to know that, because this is how you're supposed to read it. This is an incredibly deep and encoded book. And I'm only giving you 1/7 of the truth. Remember that. There's 6 other sciences that are encoded into this. I'm only giving you the most prevalent one. So once again, astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you as you see that. So what is the point of all of this? You're probably coming to that. We take for granted we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They had to know Taurus was when you put the plow on the bull and plant as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac, and was the knowledge of staying alive the most important thing. They would look at the stars and see the movement and make stories up about them and pass them down to their children. Then them to their children. Eventually they learned how to write and wrote them down. And it evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism, Old Testament, then to Christians in the New Testament. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally, okay? So now Jesus disappears at 12 and comes back at 30. This has been a subject of great debate, but the answer is quite simple, actually. What happens to a young Jewish boy at the age of 12? He becomes bar mitzvahed. He becomes a man. So Jesus becomes a man and leaves to study. He starts his ministry at 30, but why? Well, the ancient Jewish religion has roots in Saturnalia worship before it. It's why their day of rest is Saturday or the Saturn day. So why 30? Saturnalia worshippers said that you were not allowed to become a teacher until Saturn came back to the point it was at when you were born. It just so happens that Saturn takes 30 years to come back. Refer back to Ezekiel at 30, seeing God. Ezekiel's inaugural vision. In my 30th year, in the 4th month on the 5th day, when I was among the exiles by the Kabar River, the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. Speaking of God, you're probably asking if I'm an atheist. I'm not. The sun tells the hour of the day. The moon tells the day of the month. The zodiac tells the month of the year. It's a perfect calendar. Okay, that's a fingerprint of creation to me. That's information that posts to the idea that there is a creator. Okay, in our neck of the woods in the Milky Way galaxy, in the middle of nowhere, we have a perfect calendar that we had to figure out for thousands and thousands of years that was passed down through encoded stories, but that's basically what it was. It's an encoded calendar. Okay? God is infinite. How can something exist outside of infinity? It can't. The biggest lie we've been taught is that we are separate from God, that we should fear it, that we've been separated from it. We are a part of it. Many of you have children that are literally half your DNA, so they are a part of you, but you experience them subjectively outside your body. So is with God and us. A piece of God comes down in what we call consciousness into a body, and we feel separate from it. We are all God experiencing itself subjectively. Einstein said about God that he believes in the God of Spinoza. Well, Baruch Spinoza was a thinker, okay, who said that God doesn't want you huddled in churches and temples in the cold, praying as loud as you can with others, praying the loudest. As Jesus says, those that give for publicity or pray the loudest, they have their reward. Their ego is being filled. That's what they do it for. However, if you pray, pray by yourself. The book of Thomas says, split a piece of wood and I'm there. Turn over a stone and you will find me. Spinoza's God wants you to go to the mountains and the lake and enjoy what I am created for you and worship that way. The biggest lie we have ever been collectively taught is that we need to fear and worship. When we are a baby in our mother's womb, the mother, being the supreme being, is aware of the baby. However, the baby is not aware of the mother from its vantage point, as is us with God. We are each a piece of God, unaware of the whole, because we're literally right in the middle of it, having a 3D flesh and material experience. And that's not to go into quantum physics that says that material doesn't exist, but our illusion is a persistent one that actually works for us. Moses goes to get the 10 commandments, and when he comes down, he sees them worshiping a golden calf. What's more likely? The Jews got run out of Egypt. They couldn't even let the bread rise, which is why we have matzah to this day. They rushed to the desert with just the clothes on their back, but happened to carry enough gold between all of them, found welding equipment in the desert, and built a giant statue. Or as it's told in the Bible, everyone took their earrings and gave it, and it was thrown into a fire, and a giant calf came out of it. Okay, so the sun is the gold, and the calf is the bull of Taurus. They were worshiping the sun and Taurus, which is they're the Jews who are the people of Aries, the ram. So he breaks the commandments because he's mad at them because they're worshiping the wrong time period. And you'll see time and time again, people keep trying to bring you back to bull worship. The sacrifice of the bull, the third temple is preceded by the sacrifice of a perfect red heifer, a cow, female bull. That's what's going to have to be sacrificed before the third temple is erected in Israel. Okay, Numbers 21:4-9. The Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people so that many people of Israel died. So the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned because we have spoken against the Lord and you. Intercede with the Lord that he may remove the serpents from us. And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on the standard, so it shall come about that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, will live. Well, it's the staff of Moses, okay? It's a staff with a serpent around it. Does that look familiar to you? It's the rod of Asclepius in the Greeks, which becomes the caduceus, which is actually going back to Kundalini yoga. That's where it all goes back to. Okay, so anybody that looks at this or understands this may live. Just a metaphor. These are all just encoded metaphors. In the year 1367 BC, well before Moses, Akhenaten established monotheism under a sun god in Egypt. Abraham, as the story goes, started the one true God belief, but that's just not true at all. In fact, during this time period, there have been found plenty of fertility gods and goddesses dug up in current times that the Jews have made. In fact, Moses is a character who's based on two Egyptians, Akhenaten, who's the basis of Moses, and Tuthmosis, where he gets his name, hence Moses. Okay, and it's important to know too that the detractors of this will say, yeah, but it was an ancient sun god. It was a sun god. It was monotheism. Well, it was monotheism. Monotheism is monotheism. Okay, and it's also important to know too that whereas people say that the Egyptian belief faded, it didn't. Okay, it exists today in what is known as Chemeticism or Kemet. That's where we get the words alchemy, Chemeticism. That's where we get those words from. The Egyptians kept pristine, meticulous records about their history, even things that were unflattering or painted them in a bad light. There is zero evidence of the Egyptian records of Exodus, zero. Of Moses, of the plague, of the Red Sea parting. You'd think they would have included that. There is zero mention in the Bible of the pyramids or the Sphinx. It's odd, no? You would think. Simply and always has been described the path of the sun over the ecliptic as the sun dances its way around the 12 zodiacs. Mithra, born on December 25th, the Immaculate Conception, he is the sun god and Messiah, 12 disciples, accepted sins, was killed and resurrected, became God incarnate. Cult includes communion, baptism. Adonis, born December 25th, Greek god of fertility, aka Babylonian taboos, aka Syrian savior. He was killed and buried, resurrected 3 days later. Dionysus, born on December 25th as a result of the Immaculate Conception, Greek god of winemaking, aka Bacchus, aka savior and liberator of mankind. Naturally with communion. Osiris, born late December to a virgin, Egyptian sun and underworld god, aka ruled over 12 kings, betrayed, killed, buried, risen after 3 days. Horus, born December 25th to Isis as a result of Immaculate Conception from the spirit of Osiris. God of the sun and the light, one of the Egyptian trinity, embodied the resurrection. God equals sun. December 25th is the day of the resurrection of the sun, as I've mentioned. Okay, what you're finding is that the greatest story ever told is the only story ever told, because it's what keeps us alive. You pray to the sun, because without the sun, nothing exists. Okay, and that's what they all did. Okay, this all predates Jesus, and Jesus just follows in line with the same thing. Chapter 125, Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Declaration of Innocence before the gods of the tribunal. O swallower of shades who came forth from Kernet, I have not slain people, thou shalt not kill. O doubly evil one who came forth from the Burisite realm, I have not had intercourse with a married woman, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. O he who prospers the common people who came forth from Asiut, I have not cursed a god, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. 3 of the 10 commandments are mentioned here. The rest can be found in the 42 negative confessions of Mott. Lazarus is Osiris, who Horus raised from the dead. The Greek name Lazarus equals Eliezer in Hebrew and means whom God helps. It is a strange coincidence, firstly, that the person whom Jesus resurrects happens to be named whom God helps. And secondly, that Eliezer, or breaking down its original components in Hebrew, El-Azar, closely resembles a combination of the Semitic word for God, El, with the Egyptian name for Osiris, Osir. Okay? Lazarus is not an original story that is resurrected by Jesus. It goes back to El-Azar, us. Okay? El-Osir. Now, the ancient Egyptians used to worship the sun in Taurus, the hieroglyphs of the bull with the sun between its horns on the left. Okay? Now, they start to fade after the age of Taurus, and the Jews come up now. Now, the Jews are the people of Aries. That's why they build the ram's horn to the sky on the holidays. Okay? Now, they start to fade after Aries. Then Christians come up, and they're the people of Pisces. That's why they have the Jesus fish shown below. That's why Jesus is able to feed the masses with 2 fish. The 2 fish are Pisces. Okay? Now, you see the Vesica Pisces in red, the Jesus fish, when you intersect 2 circles. John 21. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. It's a very specific number, which has to do with this, okay? The Vesica Pisces, the Jesus fish, its mathematical equation is 247 over 153. See, the ancients knew this. They knew these ancient sciences. They knew all this mind-blowing stuff, and they encoded it, okay? Now, my point of all this is basically that the Christian time is over because we're in the age of Aquarius now. So you're seeing a lot of animus towards it. You're seeing a lot of well, in the next slide, for example, One World Religion headquarters set to open next year. Of course, because we're in a new age. We're in the age of Aquarius. There has to be a new world religion. Now, it's going to be difficult to create a religion right now because how did religions create? Well, before there were cameras and there was internet and all that stuff where people could just share information across the board, all religions spread via angered violence, okay? Plowing and plundering and raping and killing, okay? So you have to understand is that wouldn't fly in today's society. You can't just throw a new religion on a world that's interconnected with each other. So the one world religion, you have the age of Aquarius. It's a sign of the man. It's the building of the man. The new age is going to be merging with machines. That's going to be the new religion. Okay? Now, the Synod of Jamnia is important too. I took this post from Encyclopedia Britannica, in case people are wondering, where do you get your information? This is in the Encyclopedia Britannica. You can literally look this up. In the 1st century, they had a Senate of Jamnia, okay, where what they did was by 100 AD, the books of the Old Testament were not canonized, believe it or not. By 100 AD, they were not in order. They ordered them, like the Council of Nicaea did in 325 AD for the New Testament. But in the Old Testament, in 100 AD, they had to do this too. Now, what they did was they got a bunch of rabbis and they got a bunch of politicians and stuff, and they put it together. Now, an interesting thing happened. In the early part of that, 30 years prior to that, in 70 AD, right around the destruction of the Second Temple, the Jews had a book that came out called the Book of Mark. A gospel came out called the Book of Mark. They actually deliberated in this synod whether or not to include the Book of Mark. And if they had made it one giant book, you could imagine. Now, there's other things that they've done too. Like, for example, the Book of Job is kind of in the middle of the Bible. It's actually the oldest book in the Bible. It predates Genesis. So whereas Genesis is the first book, it's not the oldest book. Okay? So now, Genesis 32:30, speaking of Genesis. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I've seen God face to face and my life is preserved. Okay? Well, Peniel becomes Pineal. And if you look at the Eye of Horus right here on the left, it matches up to the pineal gland in the brain. See, on the right, you have what's known as a sagittal cut of the human brain. So you cut it down the line, and then you open it up. And then that middle piece is the pineal gland. And then that brow ridge, it looks like an eyebrow, the eyebrow of the Eye of Horus, that's the corpus callosum. So the ancients knew about this. Now, what the pineal gland does is it releases something called melatonin, which when the sun goes down, it floods your body and it helps you fall asleep. We've evolved to the point where the sun, when it comes down, you get tired. That's just a natural thing. And that's because when the sun goes down, your body produces melatonin. The pineal gland also produces DMT, and it's released in 2 separate occasions in your life. Not only twice, but in 2 separate occasions. The first is when you're in heavy REM sleep. It helps you dream. It's what makes you dream. And then the second time is right before you're about to die, as your body's shutting down, your body gets flooded with it. Okay? That's where all the visions come from. That's where they see all this stuff. When people are dying, they see their past, they see their dead relatives, they see all this. This is why. It's either a portal or it just helps smooth and ease things out. Now, the pineal gland has calcium carbonate crystals in it, okay, in the vitreous fluid, okay, when it's changing pressure. It's called the piezoelectric effect. What it basically means is if you were to take these crystals, put it on a table, and hit it with a hammer, colors would fly out of it. Okay, it's a very interesting effect. Now, the interior of the pineal gland has retinal tissue composed of photoreceptor cells and is filled with vitreous fluid, just like the eyes. It is wired to the visual cortex. It contains certain reptiles. It has a cornea and a lens. Now, in many Buddhist traditions, 49 days is the total mourning period, with prayers conducted every 7 days across 7 weeks. These Buddhists believe that rebirth takes place 49 days after death. Okay, in the Jewish religion, you also have something called the Omer. It's Lag BaOmer. You count the Omer. It's a 49-day time period. You count it. Why is 49 so important? Well, it just so happens that the pineal gland becomes visible on the 49th day of gestation, and we can see that with 3D sonograms now. So the ancients knew all this. Okay, we have to stop. There's a thing called chronological ethnocentrism, which basically states that people, because we're the furthest along in time, well, that we know of, because we're current, that we have an amalgamation of the most knowledge of everything. So people in the past were stupid, so to speak. That's the look, is that the ancient people were dumb because they didn't have our knowledge now. That's just not the case. That is just not the case. Okay, society continues to go through cycles. Okay, now we're going to talk about hell, the flaming inferno, because it's important to know that hell doesn't exist. How do we detect pain? How do you detect pain? Well, with the nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, the nerve endings, the neurons. So let me ask you a question. When you give up your ghost and you shed your brain, your nervous system, and you're just your spirit, okay, and you cannot sense pain, how are you going to burn for eternity? How are you going to sense that? Okay, it doesn't make sense. What people do is they invert it and pervert it. Okay, hell is actually winter on earth. That's hell. Okay, the idea of a fiery pit where you burn for all eternity is ridiculous when you think about it logically. Hell is actually winter on earth. Why? Well, it's cold. The vegetation and beautiful flowers and plants are dead. The trees shed their leaves and bear no fruit. It's freezing cold out. People tend to get sick more often. Dangerous animals, if they're not hibernating, are starving and scrounging for food. It's dangerous for humans. The Italian word for winter is inverno. Flip a letter inferno and pervert its meaning, you get the concept of hell. This picture is Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. Satan's in the bottom level of hell. As you can see, he's frozen up to his waist in a frozen tundra. He's in the bottom layer of hell and it's completely frozen. Okay? And his wings are flapping so hard that it's freezing everything over. So Dante knew hell was winter. The Bible even says it. There will be gnashing of teeth, wailing and gnashing of teeth. When do you gnash your teeth? When do you chatter your teeth? Is it in the cold or is it in the heat? You have to ask these questions. You have to understand this. So why Virgil was chosen by Dante to lead him through hell? Virgil, Sibylline records from Virgil's eclogues, mystic writings, more specifically the fourth eclogue, which predates Christ, but predicts the birth and rise of a boy who would later become divine and rule earth. The story of the rise and fall of God's son yet again. In the fifth eclogue, Virgil gives praise to Caesar Augustus and Julius Caesar, okay, which is where we get the months August and July from. Augustus was the first emperor after Julius Caesar was betrayed. Julius Caesar, which in Latin translates to July king, which in astrology, the ruling planet of July, Leo, is the sun. Another poetic embrace on the rise and eventual slaughter of the sun's son. It's also important to note that the betrayers of both Jesus and Caesar, which are Judas, Cassius, and Brutus, are the three people that are in the lowest level of hell in Dante's Inferno. Okay? The way it is in Dante's Inferno, Satan has three mouths. Okay? And in two of the mouths, he has Cassius and Brutus, and they're facing outward. Okay, so Satan is chewing on them, but they're facing outward, whereas Judas is facing inward. He's facing inside the body. Okay, so because of all these mystical esoteric writings, it makes sense why Dante chose Virgil to be his tour guide through the layers of hell. Satan and Lucifer. Satan does not exist. He's not a red devil with a tail and a pitchfork. In fact, the earliest paintings of him in the 900s, he was actually blue. Hence where we get the Duke Blue Devils from. The Hebrew word for Shatan, or Satan, is Ha-Shatan, which literally translates to adversary. In proper context, two competing sports teams are Satans to one another. Lucifer, he is known as the light bringer, the light bearer. Genesis 1:3, and God said, let there be light. How can there be light without the light bearer? Lucifer is immediately mentioned in the Bible, if not by name, but by action and purpose. Lucifer is also known as the morning star. The morning star is also known as the planet Venus. The reasoning is that if you go out and look at the sky just before the sunrise in the east, you will see a bright light directly over it. That's Venus. It announces the arrival of God's only begotten Son, the light of the world, every single day. Lucifer is also known to have a pentagram. That's his symbol. Continuing with Lucifer as Venus, if you follow Earth and Venus's orbit around the sun in a year's time, they almost connect at 5 points. You connect that, you get the pentagram. This is literally what it looks like. Someone actually did this. There's the pentagram, okay? And you can see Earth and Venus right there at their closest points, okay? Notice Eliphas Levi's name there at the bottom. He's also the first person to invert the pentagram, pointed down. Okay, notice the two fingers up, like I mentioned. Now the goat is Capricorn and the man is Aquarius, the sign of the man. Those are connecting signs. Also at the firmament of Aquarius connects as opposing sign to Virgo, the sign of the woman firmament. The ancients knew the divine was both masculine and feminine, the left brain masculine and the right brain feminine. It's why Baphomet has a pair of tits. You wouldn't notice it unless I pointed it out. It's not a demonic entity. It's the joining of the male and female, just like the next slide. This is the rudimentary phallic symbol, the original penis, so to speak. It is known as the spear. This is the rudimentary sign of the womb, the chalice, the feminine. This is the Star of David. It's a joining of the two, a hermaphrodite, so to speak. And there is more sex magic in the Bible than you think. This is a picture or a faithful blueprint for Solomon's temple, okay? With the cubits at the bottom, this is basically a breakdown. However, do you see anything interesting in it? Does it look Does it look like it could be a rudimentary something? This is a view of Solomon's temple from above. It's important to note that Solomon is not a name of a person. It's a combination of 3 words for the sun. Sol, or sun in Latin. Om, which is the sun, which is the light of the syllable Om as advised in the Upanishads. On was the city of light, or Heliopolis in Greek. So Sol, Om, On. Okay? On was the city of light in Greece. That's why when you go into a bedroom, to get light, to be enlightened, you have to turn the lights on. That's where that comes from. This was created using sex magic. Yakin and Boaz, and I say Yakin because the J didn't come in until 1584, represents the testicles from this view. The porch is the base of the penis. The holy place is the shaft, and the holy of holies is the head. The ark or the hole of the penis is where the DNA information Torah is stored. The storage chambers represents the female womb, and the 2 entrances to them represent the fallopian tubes. So if you look at this now, you can clearly see how it's a rudimentary penis going into a vagina. Okay? So I just wanted to pause for a sec and let you guys basically catch up. I just felt like it was needed to update this PowerPoint because so much more has come into light since I did my first one. So let's move on. Samson and Delilah. Samson is Shimshon, that's his name in Hebrew, which means little son. Whereas the root of Delilah is Lila, which means night. The story of Delilah is that she cuts Samson's hair, which takes away his power, and he ends up eyes gouged out and blind. However, this is just another story of the sun and how it goes away at night and the people are blind. It's the eternal battle between the sun and night, or Set from ancient Egyptians. This is why we have a sunset. So you have Samson, Shimshon, little son. And you have Delilah, whose root is Lila, which means night. When you say goodnight to someone in Hebrew, you say Laila Tov, which means literal translation is night good, but it means good night. And what does she do? She betrays Samson. Jonah in the body of the whale. In the Hebrew, the words are Dag Gadol, which translates to great giant fish. He's in it for 3 days. It's the 3 days you see recurring in the Bible over and over again. The sun walking sideways like the crab for 3 days. And I outlined the 3 days in my other videos. Daniel and the lion's den. It's a story revolving around 2 signs in astrology. Daniel, the man, in Aquarius, which is Aquarius, and the lions, which are Leo. In the Zodiac, they're opposing signs. Abraham and Sarah. Abraham's name was Abram before he was made Abraham. Abram is a combination of 2 words. Abba, father in Hebrew, and Ram, which means ram. Father of the people of Aries, the Jews. Abram goes back to Brahma. Sarai goes back to Sarah or Saraswati, influence from the outside, from Hinduism. Lot and Lot's wife in Sodom and Gomorrah. In the ancient times, people were paid in salt. It's where the word salary comes from, salt. Why? Because it preserved the meat. And when you killed a cow and didn't eat it in one day, it would go bad. Salt kept it viable for longer. There was no refrigeration back then. Salt was the highest currency aside from gold and silver. So once you turn into a pile of salt, you have to think about it. Like leaving Las Vegas, gambling, hookers, debauchery, turning back to look one more time and turning into a pile of money. It's just a metaphor. You know, a pile of salt at the time would have been so astronomically high in value, but it's completely useless because God is burning the city down. So it's just saying, it's just a way of telling you that money doesn't mean anything. There's a town in Israel called Megiddo, which a 3rd century church was found under another church. It's one of the oldest churches known to man. In the center of the floor, there is a mosaic of the 2 fish, Pisces. Megiddo is also the root of the word Armageddon, which is the war where the war on earth and the rapture is supposed to begin. So this is a church from the 200s. Basically, it was under another church. So someone put their foot through the floor in the church and they found this church under it. Right in the middle was a commissioned mosaic of the 2 fish Pisces. See, they knew Jesus. This is before the Council of Nicaea, by the way. This is in the 200s. They knew this at the time. The zodiac surrounds the Stufetta del Bibbiena, the papal bath. I bet you don't know that. America was not founded as a Christian nation. And the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus by the Supreme Being as his father in the womb of a virgin will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter, Thomas Jefferson in a letter to John Adams. What influence, in fact, have Christian ecclesiastical establishments had on civil society? In many instances, they have been upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been sent as the guardians of the liberties of the people. That's James Madison. The Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man called Christ in the place of the sun and pay him the adoration originally paid to the sun. That's Thomas Paine. So America was not founded as a Christian nation. There's a reason there's a separation between church and state. Okay, the founding fathers knew this. Okay, they knew the truth. Okay, now this is the swastika. Okay, the swastika, if you read Wikipedia, for example, talks about its origins of ancient times, from ancient religions and its peaceful meaning. Again, tweak it a little and pervert the meaning, and you get the modern day peace that we see that will never be reclaimed as a peaceful symbol. But it goes further than that. The swastika isn't Buddhist or Hindu, Babylonian or Syrian or Sumerian. It's actually astrology. This is the oldest swastika that we found. It's 17,000 years old, and it's from the Ukraine. Now, you have to understand, too, is that the Lascaux caves go back 17,000 years. So that seems to be the outermost realm of artifacts and things regarding astrology that we've known. The Big Dipper rotating around the North Star, as you see here on the solstices and the equinoxes. Connect them, you get the swastika. Okay, that's where it comes from. It's astrology. If you go to Google and you type in when was Saturn discovered, it'll tell you 1610, as you see on the right. In 1610, Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei was the first to gaze at Saturn through a telescope. To his surprise, he saw a pair of objects on either side of the planet. Saturn was discovered in 1610. Bullshit. What about the ancient Saturnalia festivals and the basis of the Abrahamic Hebrew religions? It's a flat out lie. Okay, so you have to do deep research into this. You can't just Google things. Okay, it doesn't work like that. Okay, there are place settings and fact checks in place in order to keep you from this information. Just like how Julian the Apostate 1700 years ago talked about the sun being the fiery chariot that the planets dance around. So heliocentrism was earlier too. Julian the Apostate, who is the nephew of Constantine. Okay, the nephew of Constantine, the guy that coordinated everybody and made Christianity unified under Christianity. His nephew. Now, at the time, Christians before 325 AD were known as Helionostics. That comes from the Greek helios, which means sun, and gnosis, which means knowing. They were sun worshippers. They knew this. Julian the Apostate tried to bring him back to that, and he ended up getting an arrow in his back, killing him for it. Okay. What about Saturn, though? How does Saturn affect us in every day? Okay. Well, like this. Top left, you see the tefillin in Hebrew. Okay, you see the black cube. Saturn is known as the black cube, the black planet. Okay, in the middle, you see the Kaaba. On the right, you see the mortar board for graduation, the black square. The Nintendo GameCube, it's a black cube. Literally, the Sega Saturn is a black cube, the black robe. This all goes back to Saturn worship. Even this, earrings. Women were told that they had to listen to their god, so they got their ears pierced. Well, their god was Saturn. Okay, their god was Saturn. Saturn was a lot closer to us than it is now. Okay, and that's why you get your ears pierced, because Saturn has rings. It's also why men get wedding rings, wedding bands, because it's a ring for starters, and because they have to pledge their fidelity in front of their god. So how does this stuff manifest its way into modern day society? You're probably asking. When do you kill John F. Kennedy? November 22nd. The handover date from Scorpio to Sagittarius. Scorpio being the betrayer, he was betrayed and dies in Sagittarius because the sun dies on December 21st. That's when you kill John F. Kennedy. Okay. It's interesting to note too that John F. Kennedy, this November 22nd, 1963, is also the day that Aldous Huxley died. And it's also the day that C.S. Lewis died. Okay. C.S. Lewis, big into Christianity. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the lion being Jesus, and Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. So these are powerful people with a lot of influence that all died on the same day. Why is January 1st New Year's Day? So Neil deGrasse Tyson has gone on record saying that nothing special happens on January 1st or December 31st. He's wrong, and I've tried to call him out on it. something interesting happens. It's our new year in the world because at midnight on December 31st, if you look up as high as you can into the sky, you'll see the North Star. It's not the North Star. I'm sorry. I have to change that. It's actually Sirius. It's actually our dog star is at its height. Okay. So I'll have to change that. Forgive me. It doesn't get any higher than that. Follow a line straight down to Earth, and follow a line straight down to the sun. It's a perfect alignment. Otherwise, we should have New Year's in Aries, March 21st, when Passover and Easter happen, or September 21st, around when the Jews have their New Year's, or the solstices. Why do they always crash the stock market in Libra? The panic of 1907, October 1907. The Wall Street crash of 1929, October 24th, 1929. That's the handover date to Scorpio, but it's still in the firmament. Remember, it's still that 3-day period. Black Monday, October 19th, 1987. Friday the 14th mini crash, October 13th, 1989. Stock market downturn of 2002, October 9th, 2002. 10% in most of the world's indices dropped, October 24th, 2008. Handover date to Scorpio. You're seeing a lot of patterns with the stock market being up and down with what's going on right now. And I've on record predicting that there's going to be another adjustment to the stock market, which are all manufactured, by the way, as you can see. You think that all the stock market crashes just happen to happen in October? There's going to be another one this October. Well, yeah, this October or September. It's going to be in Libra, though. And why, though? Why Libra? Well, because we're being judged. Libra is the judgment, remember? Now, all the largest daily point gains happen to be in Aries. Okay, Aries and Libra are opposing signs. Okay, so base your financial decisions on this. Okay, you can read the stars. Remember, the stars will tell you. Roman Catholic Catechism 2116. All forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future. Consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots, the phenomena of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums, all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. Now, Abu Dawood, it is suggested that the Prophet Muhammad stated, whoever seeks knowledge from the stars is seeking one of the branches of witchcraft, that of which is inherently forbidden in Islam. So I'm not really making a case against Catholicism or Islam with this. It's not really what I'm doing. But is it possible? Do you guys think after all this, is it possible? Could it be possible that the people high up in the church, the Pope, the Black Pope, the Gray Pope, the imams, you think they might know about all these codes that I'm talking about? Do you think that they might? I think that they do. You know, so why would they have this? Well, because the Bible specifically forbids it. And the Quran does too. Yet it's the basis of it. It's just gaslighting. That's what it is. Now, what about basketball? How about the Phoenix Suns? The Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix is a story of Christ the Sun, a flaming form of life that dies and rises from his ashes. Jesus was the sun who died for 3 days and came back to life. So the Phoenix is something that rises and comes back to life. The sun represents Jesus. The sun does the same thing too. So the Phoenix Suns. What about the women's Phoenix team? Well, it's the Phoenix Mercury. Well, Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo, the only woman sign. Huh. It's interesting. So how else are things encoded into everyday life and entertainment? Most of you guys, I hope you've heard of the movie Face Off. 1990s movie Face Off starring Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. Well, what are their names? Nicolas Cage's character is Castor Troy and his brother is Pollux Troy in the movie. That's just Gemini. Those are literally the names of Gemini. Well, what about Travolta? His name is Sean Archer. Well, what is the Archer? The Archer is Sagittarius, the man with the bow and the arrow. Sagittarius and Gemini are opposing signs on the zodiac. You think this was done by accident? I don't think so. There are a ton of characters in Harry Potter that are named after stars or constellations. You have Draco Malfoy, Draco the dragon, Pollux Black, Sirius Black, the dog star, Andromeda Black, Regulus Black, Arcturus Black, Cassiopeia Black, Orion Black, and Cygnus Black. Algol, also known as the Demon Star, has a long history of evil attached to it. In Batman Begins, the evil character's name is literally Ra's al Ghul, who gets his name from Al Ghul. Now, Al Ghul is a demon star. You can literally look this up. You can look this up and look at the history behind our goal, but it's actually fixed in Taurus, by the way. I don't know if that means anything to you guys, but it is. So do you guys remember the Cranberries? Okay. The 1990s song video for the Cranberries, Zombie. Here's Dolores O'Riordan, who's painted gold, like the sun, and her head dressing represents the rays of the sun, much like Jesus in the crown of thorns. But is it that? Well, what's the very next scene after they finish their intro riff? Here we see the golden sun on the cross. And look, the hunters with the bow and the arrow, Sagittarius, where the sun is killed in Sagittarius. I couldn't find a picture of it, but right before the screenshot, they were aiming a bow and arrow. I'm sorry, right after it, they were aiming a bow and arrow right at her. Okay, this is astrology. This is what they're showing you. They're encoding this, and they expect you not to know. Katy Perry's Dark Horse video. Here we see the Eye of Horus, Illuminati symbol. Modern day things revolving around astrology. Mermaids. A combination of the man sign Aquarius or the woman sign Virgo and the fish sign Pisces. Aquarius and Pisces are connecting signs. Virgo and Pisces are opposing signs. Go figure. Bull riding, bullfighting. Aquarius the man and Taurus the bull. Jousting, 2 times Sagittarius. Lion taming, Aquarius the man and Leo the lion. Those are opposing signs. Fishing, it's the same as mermaids. Mention of magnetism. Walter Russell talks about everything, and I mean everything being electromagnetic. Electric radiates and magnetism receives. The sun is electric, the male energy, and the moon radiates, the female energy. The female cycle is a 28-day cycle, just like the moon cycle. The moon controls the tide of the ocean, and we are 70 to 95% water. It's stupid to think that the moon doesn't affect us. Also, because the sun is male and electric, it's why the male orgasm feels like a jolt of electricity going through your body, while the female orgasm feels like a wave that they can ride over and over again. Homosexuality in the Bible. Okay. Everyone knows about Leviticus 18:22. However, is it really what is said there? The Greek word arsenokotai shows up in 2 different versions of the Bible in Greek, but was not translated to mean homosexual until 1946. In the 1800s, the German Bible said, "Man shall not lie with young boys as he does with a woman, for it is an abomination." Leviticus 18:22, same with Leviticus 20:13, young boys. 1 Corinthians, the word arsenokotai. And it's important to mention that the Bible was written in Hebrew, but everyone at the time knew if you were an intellect, you wrote and read in Greek. So 1 Corinthians becomes, boy molesters will not inherit the kingdom of God. If you were to grab Martin Luther's original German translation from 1534, they used the word Nabenschänder. Naben is a boy, Schänder is molester. The first time homosexual appears in a German translation is 1983. So for all the talk about homosexuality and the religious right, getting on about it, it's a mistranslation, as always. So these are some of the books that I've decoded. I've done the book of Matthew, Revelation, Enoch, Jubilees, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Melchizedek, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Judas, Secret Gospel of John, Book of Psalms, Gospel of Q, Book of Mormon, Gospel of the Lord according to Marcion de Sinope. Now, the books that are not, and it's also important to mention that I'm actually going through the Bible now, book by book, and I intend to have the entire Bible completed. So I have the Apocrypha completed, I have the Gnostic text completed, and now I'm going through the Bible. But it's not just the Bible, okay? I've also applied this code, this codex, or this cipher, to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Enuma Elish is Babylonian, the Epic of Gilgamesh is Sumerian, the Code of Hammurabi, the Quran, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This astrotheology is the basis of all of it, okay? What about in the Quran? Not even in the Quran, the 72 virgins that they all do it for. There's a star called 70 Virginis, which borders Virgo. That's 70. There's 1 virgin in Virgo, so that's 71. Plus the virgin that you marry on Earth, that's 72. Those are the 72 virgins you get, okay? It's all astrology. That's what you get when you go to heaven. Well, what's in heaven? 70 Virginis and Virgo, plus the woman that you marry on Earth. Okay. Now I have a book series where I talk about all this stuff in great detail, amongst other things. I talk about gematria, etymology, numerology, astronomy, astrology, astrotheology, out-of-body experiences, the Akashic records, symbology, remote viewing, religious secrets, capstones of the pyramids, mystery school channelers, near-death experiences, DMT monitoring, lucid dreaming, acoustic levitation, physics and quantum physics, psychotherapy, psychology, spiritual guides, and shared dreaming, crystal technology, conspiracies not many people know about, corruption, and secret societies. Okay, I've interwoven stories together where I teach this information, basically red pilling people with all this information, stuff that they may not have learned, stuff that they may not have gotten into. But this is just basically an amalgamation of my entire knowledge. Okay, these are the 7 books that are out so far. My 7th just came out like a week ago. Okay, it's Into the Rabbit Hole series by Micah Dank. So the books are Beneath the Veil, The Sacred Stones, The Secret Weapon, Pangea's Pandemic. Pangea's Pandemic is a book that I wrote in 2017, which talks about a vaccine vector that causes people to take their lives. Okay, so I have paper trail showing that I wrote this right before the actual thing happened. Now, The Hidden Archives, The Final Type, and The Unbegun. Okay, there's going to be an 8th and a 9th book too. I also have a kids book if you guys are interested. It's A's for Aries. It's by me and my astrologer. It's for 6 to 11-year-olds. It's an intro to astrotheology. It's a kids book. It's really cute. So let's read this again. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. Yep. Now, what about this picture right here? The star is Polaris, the North Star. The lambs are Aries. The camel is Camelopardalis. The donkey is Acellus Borealis. The bull is Taurus. Jesus, the baby, has a sun behind his head. Mary and Joseph's clothing are alchemical. So now that you understand this, you can start to see these pictures and understand them a little bit differently. Okay. I am also on Facebook and Instagram at Micah Dank and Twitter at Real Mr. Dank. If you want to reach out to me, I love talking to people. I sell signed copies of my book series. And I love talking to people. So please reach out, let me know what you think. And thank you very much.